This video is sponsored by Only Crits.
Everyone knows you're a bunch of pathetic losers who can't get a job.
What do the people of your world think about your player characters? How do they view adventurers in general? What kind of role do they have in society? Like so many subjects I talk about on this channel, there is no one right answer to this question. It depends on what makes the most sense for your world, what best fits your campaign, what your players are looking for, and what suits your storytelling sensibilities. But today I just want to guide you through some options to get you thinking about the adventurers' roles in the larger world and how they are perceived by the common people. First, there doesn't have to be just one straight-up answer to this in your game. Different NPCs can have differing opinions, and some of them can change their minds based on the actions of your players. This can swing both ways. Maybe people who don't like or trust adventurers change their tune after your players act heroic, or maybe the players do something scummy and lose favor with someone who trusted them. But I still recommend that your local area where your game takes place should probably have a default opinion toward adventurers, at least when you're just starting out. It's going to make it much easier for you to hold that answer in your head and to give your players a solid footing so they know where they stand. It makes it easier to figure out how willing any NPC they interact with might be to help them, and it gives you a jumping off point when you're ready to add nuance and flesh out conflicting opinions and shades of gray. But for today, let's focus on establishing the broad public opinion. Do the common people view adventurers positively, negatively, or do they just not have a strong feeling at all? I also can't understate how much this depends on your players. Do they even think of their characters as heroes? If they don't, and they're more like explorers or mercenaries, then there's none of that same dissonance. For some groups, they don't pretend to be on a mission to slay evil for the sake of it. They're just after the gold or the glory. And for them, I don't know if you really need to sweat this too badly. And heck, if you're running an evil campaign, it's way easier to get everybody on the same page. What experience are your players hoping to have? If you start with adventurers generally distrusted by the common people and the players would have to put in the work to change how they're perceived, is that what they want from their fantasy RPG experience? Or would they rather just relax and have a good time in a game where they can hunt monsters and they don't have to do extra emotional labor to make people like them? Lots of people have to do that enough during their daily lives and might just not want that burden. And that's okay. So ultimately, this is a session zero conversation. If you decide that you have a strong preference for how the people of the world will feel about adventurers, give your players a heads up so they know what to expect. If you're instead open to a few different possible approaches, run it by your players and see what they might respond to, and what experience they might be hoping for. So today we're going to run through some different approaches for how adventurers might be perceived in your games so you can see which ones might work best for your games. And now, a word from our sponsor. You know, when I saw you online, I was worried you wouldn't look anything like your picture. I thought, sure, the corrupted kobold is beautiful, but this is too good to be true, you know? I'll be honest, I've had some bad experiences. I've been burned before. I've rolled natural ones on death saves. It's so hard to trust again. But when I saw you on onlycrits.com, I felt like it was different. And it's not just that you look incredible, although you are beautiful, but also you're thoughtful. You got me a gift. I mean, I had no idea that every purchase on OnlyCrits comes with a free D&D adventure. You offer stability. I mean, I didn't know OnlyCrits had dice vaults and dice bags too. I can see a future with you. I can see us starting a family with the Only Crits dice subscription. I think I love you. Happy Valentine's Day. Visit onlycrits.com/supergeekmike and use the promo code SUPERGEEK at checkout to help support the channel. Once again, that's onlycrits.com/supergeekmike. Thank you so much to Only Crits for sponsoring this video. We're going to discuss a lot of options for how the common people feel about adventurers, so let's start with the nicest version. People actually like adventurers, and maybe even look up to them as heroes.
Here you go, friend.
Thanks. Cool costume.
Thanks. My mom made it for me.
When I ran a game for some friends and family during quarantine, I didn't want to run the kind of game where the players were actively distrusted. One of those reasons was because both my wife and my sister were players in that game, and neither of them had a ton of experience playing D&D. So my goal wasn't to create a situation that would alienate them and make them feel like they were already fighting an uphill battle from Jump Street. I started the campaign with some monsters attacking the tavern, and, of course, the player stepped in to save the day when no one else could. And then the party saved a unicorn that protected the forest. After all that happens, you can bet the people of town would like these heroes a lot. And that worked perfectly for the tone of the larger story that I was telling. Now, is that the right choice for every game? No, of course not. But there is absolutely some value in running a game where the heroes are beloved just for being who they are. In my experience, it's pretty common for RPG and D&D players to expect their characters will be regarded as heroes. This is particularly true for 4th and 5th edition D&D, where most adventures are based on fighting evil and saving the world. In games I've run, games I've played in, and games I've watched on podcasts or live streams, I've seen a lot of players become frustrated or indignant when the townsfolk don't bend over backward to drop everything and help them. After all, these players usually believe they're the good guys, since they're fighting evil. Now, this behavior can take a lot of forms. I've even had players in multiple campaigns try to recruit armies to fight their battles with them. Not to handle another side objective or keep the henchmen off the players' backs. Literally, they wanted these forces to come into the big boss fight with them. And as the DM, I had these armies splinter off to deal with a horde of enemies so the players could focus on the big bad, and the player who recruited them got a little annoyed. But setting aside the fact that it would be pretty undramatic to have a bunch of soldiers or militia members or a criminal gang fighting in the big fight alongside the heroes, it would be a logistical nightmare. Trust me, you don't want those minions in the main battle clogging up the battlefield and slowing down initiative. But the sentiment behind it comes from a totally rational place. We are trying to save the world, so whatever anyone else is doing doesn't matter as much as this does. Even when players don't try to track down an army, it's not out of the question to hear them say something like, "Shouldn't everyone in the world be dropping whatever they're doing to solve this problem?" Of course, whether that's true or not depends on your campaign setting and your storytelling sensibilities. And I mean, just looking at the world outside my door, there are plenty of problems that everybody should drop everything to solve. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Honestly, that's probably a topic for another day when we talk about story structure. But a lot of players do feel like they should just be able to walk into the Hall of the King, explain what's going on with the giant dragon or evil necromancer, and then get full access to whatever magic or technology or resources they might need to solve the problem. And for some of them, that's sort of the fantasy that excites them about playing something like D&D. They get to roleplay as someone who speaks truth to power, and there's actually a chance that the people in power will listen. That's a really appealing fantasy, because when you're living in a late capitalist society, it often doesn't feel that way, with a few exceptions. But this behavior on the part of the players also comes from an assumption that a lot of D&D players share, especially if they haven't sat down and thought too much about it. A lot of players share the idea that adventurers are considered trustworthy and honorable by the common people, by default. If they're out there fighting monsters, why wouldn't they be? But not everybody shares this mindset. What if people don't like or trust adventurers?
Their numbers have dwindled through the years, but a few still roam our lands, offering their bloody work for coin. To this day, they shame us with their very existence.
My friend Jeremy Fox firmly believes that adventurers should be viewed with disdain whenever they come into town. And his rationale makes sense. It's rare that an adventuring party shows up when things are going well in town, and usually they leave behind a hell of a mess when they leave. So, of course, people will have some negative associations with them. But even more than that, watch your player characters in action. Does their behavior seem heroic? Or are they doing things that are actually pretty messed up? Think about what the people watching these heroes might think of them, especially if they don't have all the information. What kind of reputation are these player characters building up as they go about their adventures? If you've played a lot of D&D, you've probably seen player characters act like absolute assholes towards NPCs. This is probably because D&D is a combat simulator, and players are, arguably, conditioned to solve their problems with violence. As the saying goes, when all you have is a hammer, you wind up intimidating a lot of shopkeepers and low-level government functionaries. It might be for totally righteous reasons. They have to get their business done because lives are on the line. The greater good is at stake. But does every commoner know that? Honestly, how could they? Player characters tend to think of themselves like Jon Snow out there on the front lines against the big bad monsters. But remember that the Night's Watch are generally respected, but not believed. And if you really think about it, most adventurers aren't members of a faction of famous monster hunters, at least until I finally run that Slayer's Take game I have in my heart. Players are more likely to pursue random bounties and take odd jobs. So from the outside, they're far more likely to be treated like a sellsword or a mercenary. Players may feel like they're Jon Snow or Brienne of Tarth or Arya Stark, but to the common people, they seem a lot more like Bronn. This approach is also a little bit more old school in sensibilities. In many of his campaigns, Matt Colville seems to take the perspective that NPCs refer to low-level adventurers as rat catchers. I think that's a great term because there's a lot of disdain there. In a lot of ways, adventurers are like the ambulance chasers of fantasy worlds. That's not the kind of figure that anybody would like. But maybe that's only true when the characters are low-level. Maybe the common people actually do like and trust high-level adventurers.
I saw your laser sword. Only Jedis carry that kind of weapon.
Perhaps I killed a Jedi and took it from him.
No one can kill a Jedi.
If high-level adventurers are regarded better than the low-level riffraff, this gives your players a social standing they can aspire to. They can hope to work toward a goal where they gain enough notoriety to be treated well, and to be respected by the elite of your world. Once they get past 7th to 10th level or so, they can start to stand out from the rest of the crowd and gain some notoriety. This also sends players a signal that there are high-level allies they might be able to petition for help when the adventure turns dire. That doesn't mean doing so is easy, and at some point on this channel we're going to talk a lot more about NPC allies and high-level NPCs and the many ways they can be used in your games, and maybe a few ways they shouldn't. But if there are high-level NPCs in the world that are beloved, or at least respected by the people, then that can be a really nice break glass in case of emergency situation. That's, of course, assuming the people have any opinion about adventurers as a caste or a community at all. But what if they don't?
I feel bad for you.
I don't think about you at all.
Okay, maybe not that harsh. But maybe instead, here's another way to think of it. Are adventurers a thing people have an opinion about? I actually think this is what a lot of players want, and although they might not know how to ask for it, they're somewhat surprised when it doesn't play out this way. They often don't want to be lumped in with a bunch of people they've never met, and often, if they're new to D&D, they especially don't want to hear that they've joined a game where their characters will be judged for just being adventurers without their personal actions being factored into things. This is not universal, but some players just feel like they should be judged based on their actions and not some preconceptions that you made up all on your own. Or if they do want to play a character who gets prejudged, they'll often play as an ancestry that lends itself well to negative connotations like a tiefling or a half-orc, or even a half-elf, particularly if they're a fan of Dragonlance or Critical Role. And then at least they're getting a chance to opt into being judged, and they're doing so on their own terms. And honestly, this approach can be great because it requires the least amount of work on your end. If every adventurer is judged for who they are, and not for any broader reputation or social stigma about their class of people, then you don't need to work that hard to justify any pro or anti-adventurer sentiments. All you need to do is have the people of the world react authentically to the behavior of your players, which hopefully you were already planning to do. But that leads to another question. If they aren't being judged for the actions or sentiments around any other adventurers, are there other adventurers? How common are they in the world of your game? Well, what if adventurers are commonplace?
I even follow Teen Team on Instagram.
That's us, everyone's fourth favorite superhero team.
There's a comic book called Rat Queens that I really enjoyed but have a really hard time recommending due to some pretty significant behind-the-scenes controversies. But in that comic, adventurers are commonplace enough that in the first issue, 5 separate teams of adventurers are recruited, actually I think they're arrested, and they're assigned to handle various errands for the city. Cleaning out the goblins, taking down bandits, clearing some undead, slaying an ogre, and cleaning the latrines at the barracks. All just some things that need to get done. In that world, adventurers are common enough that you can have the captain of the guard just handing out assignments like they're giving out community service tasks to shoplifters. There are some games and some worlds where this is the expectation. The Critical Role D&D book, Call of the Netherdeep, has a rival party of adventurers who your heroes will bump into throughout the story, so you're not the only adventurers in that world. The Forgotten Realms is so chock-a-block full of adventurers, every NPC is a retired hero, and there's a whole board game where you hand out missions to adventurers. It's actually a fantastic game. And you can do a lot with this premise, if you want to. In fact, if you're running a West Marches game, this approach is practically a necessity. You don't even need a bunch of NPC adventurers, considering how many adventurers the party will meet through the rotating cast of players. Although, actually, having former adventurer NPCs in a West Marches game would make a lot of sense to me, personally, because I think the best use of retired adventurer NPCs is to demonstrate for players that they have options. It's a way to show them that they can develop personal ambitions and try to work toward achieving some standing in the world. And for a West Marches game, that can be really useful to get the players thinking about what sort of objectives their character could have outside of just adventuring. And then perhaps they will retire those characters and bring in new ones as their old characters become NPCs. But again, that's just one approach. What if, instead, adventurers are a lot rarer?
Jesus Christ. That's Jason Bourne.
In games like Dungeon World and in worlds like Dragonlance and Theros, there aren't assumed to be dozens of errant adventurers wandering the world. Adventurers are rare and special. Now, that's not a common perception among players because they all play adventurers. They almost don't have an option not to. So, of course they usually assume there are more adventurers out there. Why wouldn't they? Every time they sit down to create characters for the game, they're creating an adventurer. And it's really hard to tell them that they're the exception if they don't feel that represented in any meaningful way. But if your campaign doesn't share the expectation that there are a lot of other adventurers, you sort of have a trade-off. On the one hand, it becomes more of an odd coincidence that a bunch of heroes banded together when there are so few of them in the world. On the other hand, it heightens the tension for your stories, since you don't have any other adventurers you can turn to as a way to bail you out of a jam. In fact, this also helps reduce the cognitive dissonance we discussed earlier, where players wonder why they're the only ones out there dealing with the threat of giants or whatever. If they're some of the only adventurers in the world, it makes a lot more sense that there might not be anybody else out there to take on whatever threat the party is dealing with. So, how do I handle this situation in my games? Well, the specifics usually depend on the campaign, but my personal preference is to have adventurers generally regarded with a bit of distrust.
He pulled 6 people off that subway car.
Sure, from a wreck he probably caused. Something goes wrong and this creepy crawler is there. Look at that. He's fleeing the scene. What's that tell you?
The reason I like this approach is because as you play for longer and more NPCs begin to trust you more, your reputation grows. And that change feels more substantial when the opening of the story has you regarded as somebody who can't be trusted. If the characters start toward the bottom of society, then we can see individuals change their minds about them over time. And then you can have moments that demonstrate how far they've come. And that contrast from the beginning of the campaign will make those moments land with a much greater impact.
It's all right.
We found something. We won't tell nobody.
I also generally prefer to have very few, if any, high-level NPC adventurers. If I'm running a game where low-level adventurers are commonplace, then a few retired NPCs make a lot of sense. And again, they can demonstrate potential pathways the heroes can try to take and help inspire them to have ambition in the world. But I'm also working on a campaign setting where the player characters would be the first adventurers in living memory. And so I'm trying to figure out what exactly that means for how the characters would be perceived. Thankfully, as I've already said, there's no wrong answer. Thank you so much for watching. This subject is really interesting to me, and I'm sure I could talk about it a ton more, so I encourage you to let me know in the comments. What else do you want me to dive into on this subject? I want to thank Gerard and Julie, 2 viewers from Ireland, for sending this package to my P.O. box. They sent me the collected editions of the Vox Machina comics. Thank you so much. These are awesome, and I am so excited to dig in and read them. I've read a few issues of these comics here and there, and I love what I've read, so I'm looking forward to diving into them in more detail and probably making some video content about them soon. Thank you again so much for sending these. If you want to support the channel, there are a few ways you can do so. You can subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about new videos as soon as they come out. You can support me financially on Patreon. Even joining at $1 a month really does help the channel a lot. You can join my Discord and be a part of a cool community of people who give each other advice and share insights. It's really lovely. And you can sign up for my newsletter to get occasional updates about life and stuff. A huge portion of today's topic also has a lot to do with the setting of your game, so click here for a video about choosing the right campaign setting. Until next time, play fair and have fun.